All right, today I'm on the shores of Petitenget Beach. It's beautiful, as you hopefully can see. And I'm gonna go for a walk on the beach and talk about entrepreneurship again. So a viewer asked about the Halloween story and how I lost $50,000 in about 2 days and bankrupted my company and almost lost my mind during this process. And there's a few reasons why I want to share this story. Number one, it's just good to sort of get it out there so it doesn't keep on troubling. It's been almost 15 years since that Halloween party happened. But there's a few transferable lessons, and these are important if you plan on being an owner in Bali. And that's the reason why I'm telling you these stories. So I'll talk about Halloween. I'll talk about owner vision. I'll talk about Dunning-Kruger effect. And I'll talk about what wisdom means, all in that same breath. So how did this happen? Well, back in 2012, there was a new technology that was gaining a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. It wasn't AI, it was social media. If you remember back in 2010, 2011, the sort of nascent world of social media had blossomed into the mass market. Your grandmother was probably using Facebook at this time, and that was a good sign. That was a sign that things were meant to do amazing things. At that point, we here in Bali, as young entrepreneurs, were under the pressure of choosing how to do marketing. Marketing is a very important factor to successful businesses here in Bali, because I mean, you could basically be in a hidden location, and you don't even need to have the best product, but if enough people know about you, you become the default choice for the first wave of users. And then of course, the second wave of users generally follow the first wave. So then you build up a snowball that way. And so a lot of the marketing at the time was held by the powers that be in printed advertising. And printed advertising was definitely the go-to marketing source. And I've always felt printed advertising was the establishment that young Turks like ourselves were trying to fight against, that we were going to use more lean, efficient, modern, futuristic ways to get marketing done. And so we despised printed advertising, even though secretly I really admired the work that Sophie Digby and Alistair did at, I think, Bali Now and the Yak and Bud magazine. They actually, I missed their work in many ways. I missed the journalistic integrity, the depth of actual editorial content, and all that good stuff, right? Hi guys. And so basically I said, all right, we're not gonna use traditional marketing. We're gonna use social media marketing. And we figured out something pretty interesting. We figured out that what really excites people on social media are parties and tagging your friends at parties. So the strategy was at the time to use large events, tag everybody who went, and subsequently you would, I guess you would seed your next batch of users and grow even bigger. So in theory that should work, right? That's a pretty good idea. What led us to believe that a large Halloween event would work was that we found massive success on pool parties. So we would host these end-of-year pool parties for our Norwegian school students, and they would come and they would party, and because they were partying in our properties, our villas, the subsequent social media spread went out pretty far, and that attracted in turn the next batch of students to come and be our guests for the next semester. At the time, our primary business was actually in school lodging, you could say. We were renting out villas to students who had study abroad programs. The Norwegian government was very generous, and they had provided scholarship grants to students to study abroad, provided that they maintain, I think, like a B average. But herein was the irony. The schools, they were all over the world, but there was a few large ones here, right here in Bali, particularly in Jimbaran. Long story short, the school eventually realized that we were taking away their business. And it wasn't until about 10 years later that I learned that the business of the lodging was more profitable and had more business value than the business of schooling. So that was something they could not sustain. As a result, the school basically petitioned to remove us, Bukit Vista, as an accommodation provider because we were too far away from the school. They wanted partnerships that were closer by and had, they had approved basically, the school wanted a kickback on all their, all their housing. And I mean, they could have just told us that, but instead they changed the rules and expected the students to follow. So we, being young entrepreneurs, thought that, okay, the students love us anyways. They've expressed their love at parties and we throw great parties. So why don't we just, instead of kowtowing and bowing down to the school's rigid rules, we will just, we'll do like an Animal House fraternity parlor trick, right? So that's what we did. We committed to host a really large Halloween party, hoping to gain student support and overcome this ban that we were facing at the time, and thereby be able to, be able to successfully continue our business. Unfortunately, it didn't work. And this is the part where I'll connect it back to Dunning-Kruger and owner vision and how it applies to so many people who start businesses in Bali. Dunning-Kruger refers to this interesting curve, which says that basically, if you plot, let's say, experience on one axis, on the x-axis, right? And you pick confidence level on the y-axis, what generally happens is that people with no experience generally have no confidence. But then after a little bit of experience, they have enormous confidence. They think that they absolutely know what they're doing. And then because they think they absolutely know what they're doing, they go and do something really, really stupid. And then eventually their confidence goes way down to zero again, because they feel like they failed and now they have been smacked in the face with reality. And then generally over time, if they commit to do what they intended to do, they will build up their confidence and attain mastery in the particular field that they are aiming for, okay? So how does this apply? It applies to almost every kind of business I can think of in Bali. You have people starting restaurants who have no restaurant experience or maybe had a successful dinner party thinking that they're now going to open a restaurant in Bali. I've seen this happen many times. There was actually the daughter of the owner of a property that we had in Canggu. It was a brilliant property. It was one of the first one-bedroom pool villa properties in Bali. It was kind of like a unique complex of single-unit pool bedroom villas, and it did remarkably well. It did remarkably well because Hey, how's it going? There wasn't a lot of other one-bedroom pool villas, and so a lot of people who were coming down to that area really enjoyed it. But long story short, when the daughter got back from her she was studying, I think, culinary arts in Paris, she decided she would open a restaurant. And as a result of that, she decided that she would run the successfully operating hotel into some sort of resort. And she opened the restaurant and promptly failed. Well, and that restaurant is still empty, by the way. I think it's called Paddle or something over in Canggu. It's not too far away from Dos. So what can we learn from something like that? It's Dunning-Kruger effect, right? The less experience you have, the more confident that you can actually succeed doing this. And so what's the solution for Dunning-Kruger is an interesting question. What's the solution, right? And so I have a very easy solution, and this has served me pretty well now. Before I go and attempt to actually do something, let's say even with video editing and doing vlogging as I'm doing right now, it's really smart to go and talk to somebody who's actually doing it and has actually done it and just get their opinion. I mean, I think it's also important to be the person who asks rather than the person who is, let's say, it's more important that you go and you pick a person to ask and ask them direct, like, hey, yo, I see you're doing video editing. How is it? Is it as fun or exciting or whatever as I see what it could be on YouTube? And listen to what they tell you, okay? Many people step into opening restaurants or doing vlogging or whatever it might be because they saw it on an ad. And that's I think the worst part of this whole Dunning-Kruger mess, is because if you believe ads, then, I mean, you know how good AI is at targeting ads these days. They'll find you really quick, even if you have just begun to bloom some basic interest in a topic, okay? So if you're listening to this and you want to avoid having a tremendous failure on opening a restaurant or spa or hotel or an Airbnb or whatever it is in Bali, I suggest you go and talk to somebody who actually has some experience. And hey, look, you know, if you're doing an Airbnb or an accommodation, you can talk to me and I'll have you talk to any of the people who come to our round table talks and have an honest discussion about it. I mean, if you choose to use Book Vista, great. I would appreciate that, because I hope that, you know, you've already been educated on what the, let's say, expectations need to be for an owner. But, you know, if you just make a friend and become part of our network, that's great too. I don't really mind. I'm fine, okay? I'll survive one way or the other. I can have time to do YouTube videos right now, so I'm okay. But anyway, just had to check if the drone was still following me. I had this feeling it was gone already. So, Dunning-Kruger effect. So, anyways, getting back to the Halloween story, what happened next? So, basically, we held the party, and nobody came. So, it was a big fail. And on top of nobody coming, I had gone all out and tried to do a 5-stage journey event, which was really dumb because it requires massive amounts of logistics. If you don't know what that means, it means you start a party in one location, you go to the next location, and another location, and another location, and I violated so many rules in that event. I violated the rule that you need to pre-sell the event before you have the event. That's generally a good idea. That way you have what is known as product market fit. Means that you should not sell a product that nobody is willing to buy, no matter how much you're in love with it, unless you want to keep it and buy it yourself. And the next rule was never to move people from a location they're already growing, because people attract people. That's how I actually learned that nightclubs and a lot of events are nothing to do with the music. They're nothing to do with, you know, anything that sophisticated or abstract. It's actually a mating area. So you think of animals. Animals have like feeding frenzies and they have mating frenzies, right? Like kind of like fish spawning or something. So nightclubs and events are the same. So they start getting exponentially bigger when there's more mating choices, right, for all the participants involved. And that's where things get really exciting. So by having a journey event where people are moving from place to place, you just simply avoid that growth, which was, you know, upon retrospect, it was pretty dumb. Hey, this is a new bridge. How awesome. It's a new bridge that smells like crap because this river behind me is full of sewage, but, you know, at least I don't have to waddle through the sewage in my sandals anymore, which is great. Okay, so that's the story of my gigantic Halloween failure, and I don't regret it at all now. I don't regret it one bit. At the time, it was deeply traumatic. I have to say, it was. I think I talked about it on another one of my beachside talks. It was deeply traumatic because it shattered all my dreams. You know, I really thought Halloween was awesome. I wanted everyone to believe it was awesome, and I was left with the only person who thought it was awesome at the end, with a bill and debtors knocking on my door asking for me to pay for, you know, speaker rentals and light head rentals and all these things that I thought would be cool to add to the event. Man, it was, my wife was really patient. She should have divorced me right then and there, but she stuck with me as a good Balinese wife would. And she watched me get back on my feet. And then, I mean, the happy news is right after that, or about a year after that, got a job at Airbnb and became a market manager of Indonesia. So that was pretty cool. But I don't know if those two parts would have connected together if this tragedy didn't happen. So here's my takeaway for you guys, okay? If you guys want to learn the hard way and come to Bali and take your retirement savings and blow it all on some stupid idea without ever talking to anybody in the business, you're welcome to do that. But I think that kind of mistake at 50 or 60 is far more tragic than making that mistake when you're 20 like I did. So I would recommend probably just go and talk to somebody, once again, that you know, that you've chosen to ask about what is the reality of this business and what do you think about it, right? And gain as much intelligence as you can. If you don't like the answer from one person, ask 2 or 3 other people. I don't think 2 or 3 other people that you choose will be collaborating or conspiring against you. And you know, once you have that, then you're on your way to doing a little bit of simple AI research to fill in the gaps, and you can avoid starting a business that you regret. Now here's a takeaway. Ironically enough, and this might seem very counterintuitive, the more risky the idea, meaning like the more crazy it sounds in Bali, the more likely it works, because I've noticed that Bali is a place where new trends pick up fairly quickly. So if you're pretty confident you're the first, and there's nobody else, there, sooner or later it will happen. I mean, sometimes you have to wait a few years before acai or, avo toast or whatever catches on, but these things do catch on eventually because people on holiday are a little bit more liberal with their money they want to spend. And so for better or worse, there is nobody in Bali who will oppose you on most of your ideas, although these days the government's a lot more strict about licenses, so it's not like a free-for-all. If you want a free-for-all, go to Lombok, go to Sumbawa. I'm sure they would gladly have any foreigner try to spend some money here, unlike some of the regulations that we're beginning to see, which are good. Bali needs regulation. I'm somewhat positive about that these days, right? But it will curtail innovation, as all regulation eventually does. It will kind of slow down perhaps, we don't need to innovate on things that already are well done, right? There doesn't need to be too much innovation on another white Mediterranean villa or another smash burger place in Bali. I think that's good. That niche has been well filled, okay? So do think of something else that's a little bit more creative. All right, that's it. Hopefully that is a good session there. And if you like what you see, please like, comment, subscribe. Please let me know if I'm touching some heartstrings, because once again, I am just walking down the beach with the selfie stick, as you can see, but hopefully also you get a good sense of what's happening in Bali as you listen to my voice. All right, that's it. Jalan Jalan episode finished. See you next time.